Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the Education Secretary's complete meltdown under the pressure of her own incompetence and laziness as she launches an F-bomb tirade at a journalist, which Labour of course happily use in their latest promo video, and how she's reported to have said she wanted to keep a lid on the schools crisis, in other words not tell the public, until after the election, after which it would be Labour's problem. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So it's an interesting thing about the modern Conservative cabinet. So many of them are pushing their toxic culture wars that when you observe someone not joining in, you sort of wonder if they're one of the good ones. One of the cabinet ministers who, under a more principled Tory leadership, might actually be a decent minister, pushing political ideas that I strongly disagree with, but at least working for what they think is for the best. Gillian Keegan, the Education Secretary, may have been such a person as far as I knew. I didn't really know what she was like until this school buildings crisis thrust her into the spotlight. I knew she wasn't really one for the culture wars. I also knew that she wasn't doing anything to actually improve education, but for all I know, it's because she's got now no power to. So most of the problems with the education sector right now stem ultimately from funding rather than legislation. I mean, and if the Treasury won't hand over money, even the most committed education secretary can't really do much. But under the media spotlight of school buildings literally collapsing, and many more at imminent risk of doing so, many more, the Education Secretary faced the full glare of the public spotlight yesterday. In it, she revealed that she's just as nasty as the culture warriors. She was in Westminster, preparing to do a quick interview. As the camera was rolling, but before she thought she was on, she said, "Does anyone say, do you know what? You've done an effing good job." You what? A good job on what? There she is, having known that school buildings were now going to start collapsing for all of 2023 at least. And I say that because I've known it for all of 2023. She also knows that it's not down to an unexpected natural disaster. It's because her party in government simply didn't rebuild schools when they were supposed to. We've learned this week that the government should have been rebuilding like 300 to 400 schools a year in order to keep on top of things. But Rishi Sunak as Chancellor only provided enough money for 50 schools a year. Now, Keegan may not be directly responsible for this mess. I think part of the point she was trying to make is the mess wasn't caused by her personally. No, but she has chosen to represent the party and government who is responsible. And this is her attitude. Even if she thinks that she personally has done her best, she should have been adopting a show of extreme humility because she's representing that party and that government. But also, a good job on what? What? When Keegan apologised for her language on Twitter, she said she'd been working non-stop to resolve the issue as quickly as possible. I pointed out that she's known about this issue for the whole of 2023 at least. And as I say, I can confidently say that because I did a video on it in January. If I knew about it, of course she did. I asked her what she has done with this non-stop work. Where can we see the results of this non-stop work? For 8 months at least. 8 months of non-stop work. Where's the evidence of it? I won't get an answer. But I'm not sure any prominent journalist will, if they even ask her. Because if she's been working non-stop since January to resolve this, there is no sign of it. Yesterday, she said that each affected school will get a caseworker. You what? A caseworker? Is that what she's calling builders now? They're going to get some builders. They need builders. What's a caseworker going to do? Also, is it really all affected schools who'll get a caseworker? What does she mean by affected schools? I would think affected schools are the ones at imminent threat of collapse. But the Tories are trying to conceal the identity of as many affected schools as possible. So I doubt they're all getting a caseworker. What she might mean by affected schools is the one the public know about. Obviously, they can't hide the identity of the schools that have actually collapsed, or those which have been closed with 1 day's notice, which when I think about it, this is the second time this Parliament that the Tories have closed a lot of schools with a single day's notice. and on both occasions it was due to their own greed and incompetence. Both she and Sunak have also tried to defend themselves by saying, well, most schools aren't falling down. They're literally looking for a round of applause because there are some schools still standing. Oh, it's not that bad. I mean, we've still got some schools. What? No. Keegan said that affected schools have received rapid support and funding. No, they haven't. They've received a questionnaire. That's not rapid support. That's it. They've received a questionnaire. Oh, and some of them have got a caseworker now. And what's this caseworker going to do? Also, Hunt said there's going to be no new money to deal with this, so they've not received funding either. You know, we should be asking, well, what funding? How much is this funding? Will it get them a new building? Because if a building's collapsed or is about to collapse, that's what they need. They need a new building, or at least a partly refurbished building. You know, you need to eliminate, if there's a risk of collapse, you need to eliminate the risk. You need whatever building is necessary to eliminate that risk. Are they going to get it? Because Byline Times, the East Anglia branch of Byline Times, ran an interesting accusation. They are reporting that Keegan, back in February, said that she wanted to keep a lid on the problem for 2 years. Then it's someone else's problem. That someone else, of course, would be Labour. Because if she thinks that her party is going to win the next election, she'd be expecting to remain a senior member of the government, wouldn't she? Now, this is like the Boris Johnson bodies piled high moment, isn't it? We don't have a record of it, only a tip from a whistleblower. So it's deniable, and no doubt they would deny it, just like Johnson did. We can't prove it. But if we want to ask, does it seem feasible? Like, what evidence is there that whether Keegan said it or not, that she acted on this, like, instinct? Because she certainly knew about the crisis in February. Like I say, I knew about it in January. So if she didn't say it, or say these specific words, there would be some, or if she didn't even have the intention, there'd be some evidence that she'd been working on contingency plans over the last half a year, wouldn't there? Even if she wasn't, you know, alerting the public, she was trying to keep it hidden from the public. Behind the scenes, she'd be doing something. Where's the evidence she's done anything? As far as I can see, there's been no action from the government until the collapse has started to occur, to the point where the mainstream media they had no choice but to start putting them on their front pages. No choice at all, because it was out amongst the public. Even the media outlets that wanted to try and cover it up, their readers want to know about it, so they've got to feed their readers. No, whether Keegan said what is being reported in these words or not, it's clear this was her intention. It was her intention to keep a lid on it until after the election, because that is the evidence we've got. There's no evidence she's done anything to deal with the crisis until a few days ago, despite knowing about it for many months. And even now, she's actually still not doing anything about it. She's now just making a show of doing something. Oh, we'll give them a caseworker. Oh, that's marvellous. That sounds good. Oh, caseworker, they'll sort it out. Will they? Why would you do nothing about school buildings being about to collapse unless you were just hoping they remain standing until after the election? And then her reaction to that journalist, that is the reaction of someone who simply cannot take the pressure. She melted under the pressure. Tiny little bit of pressure, the first bit of pressure she's had as a cabinet minister, and she folds like a cheap deck chair. She exposed herself as utterly unfit for government in so many ways. First, she was warned about a crisis and did nothing. She attempted to conceal the crisis from the public in the hopes that the crisis would actually hit under a later government, so she didn't have to deal with it. So that's straight away unfit for government. Second, when the crisis does hit and she can't deny it, she still does nothing. Third, when she was criticised for doing nothing, she petulantly complained that nobody was thanking her for doing a good job of doing nothing. And this reflects on the wider Conservative Party. If she doesn't lose her job, this reflects on all of them. Because someone with this attitude is a senior member of the government. That means the Conservatives don't value hard work and effective outcomes. Because if they did, she'd be in line for the sack. I don't know that she's in line for the sack here, you know. I'm not sure that there's any... I think the Telegraph have hinted that maybe her job is in danger. But I'm not sure what they're basing that on. Other than the fact that her job should be in danger. And I think that tells you all you need to know about the Tories. Like, she's still there. After that, she hasn't resigned. She hasn't been made, you know, Sunak should be tapping her on the shoulder. Probably because he's as guilty as she is. He's more guilty than she is. Maybe he feels he needs to keep her there. Because otherwise people will be saying, oh, it's all right, sack you there, but you're really responsible, aren't you, Sunak, me old China? They're not even trying to win the election at this point. There can be no further doubt. They're just in it to grab what they can before having to call an election. I wonder if they even care about limiting their losses at this point, because that's what I've said in the past. As soon as the Tories accept that they're not going to win the election, surely strategically the focus should be on trying to retain as many seats as possible to give yourself a springboard for a future election. Because here's the situation. They've got two more crucial by-elections coming up at some point. You've got Mid-Bedfordshire, which is absolutely known, but then you've got Tamworth, Chris Pincher's seat. He's going to be suspended for long enough to trigger a recall petition, unless he resigns. I mean, he may have. I haven't heard that he's resigned yet. He may resign. But either way, the recall petition is probably going to succeed. So that's another by-election at some point. So Sunak's got two by-elections that are very losable. And the last thing you think he would want, if he really wanted to win the election, was schools and hospitals falling down because he refused to fund their repairs and replacements. You know, Keegan's outburst really was a classic example of what this government are like. No ideas, no work ethic. I often describe Conservatives as, unlike the other mainstream parties, not being a group of people who want to govern, and maybe I agree or maybe I disagree with their ideas. But they're just seat blockers. They don't actually want to govern. It's not their intention to govern, but in a way I don't approve of. They don't want to. There are some Conservatives who do, but not enough. And they never really seem to get to the top of the table. They just want to stop others governing. That's their role. Stop others governing the country. Let the billionaires run things. I'm going to suggest that Keegan's reaction yesterday, and if she doesn't lose her job for this, means that you'll have a very hard time trying to prove me wrong on this idea that the Conservatives not only don't want to govern, but don't even want to win the next election. If she's not going to be sacked for fiddling while schools collapsed, and she's not going to be sacked for a petulant outburst, and if she's not even going to be sacked for the fact that she has now hammered a few more nails into the coffin of this long expired Tory government, because she has now caused further reputational harm to that Tory government. If she doesn't get sacked for any of these things, that is because the Tories don't see a problem with what she's done and what she's not done. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.